The message arrived like a blade pressed to my throat. Ava, I'm sorry. I've decided to leave with Chloe. 10 minutes before the ceremony. The phone slid from my hand, the screen cracking in a bright white room full of lilies and murmurs. The noise of guests dimmed to a distant tunnel. I had imagined vows, applause, a kiss. Instead, I was a statue in satin, looking at a life that had been snatched mid-breath. Was this the end of my story, or the raw beginning of something I didn't yet understand? My name is Ava Williams, and for 5 years, I built a reputation in the luxury accessories section at Neiman Marcus in Midtown Manhattan. I was the woman who arrived before the lights fully warmed, who straightened displays until a handbag looked like it had exhaled into the exact right place. The store manager called my name for top sales so often that the applause began to feel like a second uniform. I wore humility with my crisp blazer. But I wasn't naive. Some colleagues smiled through tightened cheeks. Still, I loved the work. I loved the ritual of matching a client to a thing that felt like destiny. That's how I met Chloe Beaumont, old money sheen, expensive boredom, eyes like polished glass. She was demanding with everyone except me. When she asked if a limited edition bag came in a rarer color, I did what I always did, made calls until a door opened. A special order. I told her after 15 minutes. Her face glowed as if I had parted a small sea. "You have style," she said, and the words hung in the air like perfume. Rumors sprout quickly in break rooms. Over salad, Tasha older, protective, unsparing, warned me that Chloe changed boyfriends like seasons and relished plucking men from other women. I laughed it off, said she watched too many soaps, but the warning stuck like a burr. A week later, leaving a friend's gathering in Soho, I saw Marcus in a dim corner with Chloe. Her hand rested lightly on his. His eyes darted like trapped birds when he noticed me. "Just business," he said, unfolding documents with careful hands. Chloe smiled as if nothing on earth could surprise her. I went home and slept beside a phone that stayed stubbornly dark. As the wedding drew near, Marcus grew busy. The planner couldn't reach him. My friends could see through the excuse I tried to live inside. The night before, at 10:00 p.m., I told him I was nervous. "Sleep," he said, and the emptiness after the call rang louder than any dial tone. In the morning, makeup artists swirled around me. Friends whispered that I looked like a goddess, and still my eyes returned to the blank screen. By 11:00 a.m., murmurs rippled through the venue, no groom. Devon, a co-worker of Marcus, arrived with sweat on his forehead. He stammered that Marcus had resigned yesterday going to work for the Beaumonts. My vision narrowed to a pinpoint. Then the vibration in my hand, a text blinking through tears. "You are a good person, but I need a bigger world." Chloe showed me that world. A photo followed an airport lounge, 2 business class tickets to Paris, a diamond ring sparkling where mine should have been. My father announced the cancellation to a ballroom of whispers and lifted phones. Somewhere, someone filmed my stumble down a back hallway, satin dragging like a limp wing. By evening, the clip was everywhere. The wedding where the groom fled with comments that sliced clean through skin. I refreshed, then deleted, then scrolled again, trapped in a loop of pain that fed on itself. Days later, Chloe posted a photo under the Eiffel Tower, captioned, "Finally with my love." Heart emojis stippled like confetti over my life. 1 week after the implosion, I walked back into Neiman Marcus in a tailored black suit. The armor I knew. Clients peered and whispered. A kind VIP offered condolences that detonated my composure. In the manager's office, I resigned with a voice that cracked only once. Leaving the floor where I'd been a star felt like stepping off a stage into an alley with no lights. I closed my apartment door, pulled the curtains, turned off the world. My mother called. My friends texted. But shame is a deep well, and I had thrown myself to the bottom. At a 24-hour convenience store, hood up, I stared at instant noodles like they might forgive me. A man in an impeccable suit approached. "You're the associate from Fifth Avenue," he said gently. "Dennis Sterling, producer at ShopStream." He had watched me sell. He insisted I had something rare. He placed his card on the shelf when I didn't take it. "If you ever feel like standing, call me," he said. "The people who've been sitting can jump the highest." It sounded like a line until life made it a rope. I didn't call until the night the hospital lights turned colorless with fear. My aunt's voice shook at 3:10 a.m. and by 3:40 a.m. I was standing under the hard fluorescence of an emergency ward while a surgeon explained that my mother had suffered a stroke and needed surgery that would cost $30,000. I did the math I didn't want to do. I had emptied my savings on deposits for a dress that never walked the aisle, a venue that ended in silence, a honeymoon that became somebody else's itinerary. The loan officer's apology was gentle and useless. Pride, that brittle thing, kept me from calling coworkers who had watched me unravel online. Back in my apartment, I dug through the kitchen trash and found Dennis Sterling's bent card, the one I had been too proud to accept. I called him with a voice I barely recognized. He didn't ask for a pitch. He simply said, "Come in tomorrow morning." The ShopStream studios were colder than I expected and brighter, a constellation of cameras and cables and clocks that ran faster than real time. Dennis put a stainless steel pressure cooker in my hands and set a date 1 week out. "You won't memorize, you'll understand," he said, tapping the manual. "People don't buy features. They buy the feeling that life will be better." I arrived at 5:00 a.m. each day and left after 9:00 p.m., practicing to a red light that refused to smile back. A veteran host named Simone taught me to speak to a single person on the other side of the lens, not a crowd. I cooked soup at dawn and burned rice at midnight, learning the language of steam and timing and the hum that says sealed. Rehearsal morning. My mouth went desert dry. The producer's countdown sprinted to 0. The light blinked on, and every word I had practiced vanished into white noise. I stumbled. I clattered metal. I watched a floor manager's eyebrows knit. "Smile," someone mouthed, and my muscles obeyed without convincing my heart. When we cut, Dennis didn't scold. "The live show will be different," he said with a calm that felt like a bridge over a flooded road. But as 2:00 p.m. neared and makeup turned my fear into a polished stranger, I felt the old tunnel of the wedding day open at my feet. The first 10 minutes were a slow-motion crash. I forgot the safety valve name and called the lid a door. The call counter stayed flat. I heard my own breathing as if it belonged to someone on a treadmill too far from an emergency stop. Then a thought broke through the noise. My mother, pale behind glass. A tray of tasteless food cooling at her elbow. The sentence left my mouth before the censors could catch it. I told them I was frightened. I admitted it was my first live show. I rested my hand on the steel and said if I could make her chicken and rice soup the way she liked, I'd take it to her still warm. The room stilled. The chat scrolled encouragement I couldn't fully read. I started again, slower, this time without a script, explaining how the steam lock protected a forgetful daughter, how a timer gave back minutes you could spend holding a hand that needed you. The phones began to ring, one line and then all of them. The counter jumped like a heart restarting. We sold out in 8 minutes. I kept talking through the remaining time, showing how to clean the gasket, laughing at my earlier fumble, promising to bring recipes when we restocked. When the red light finally dimmed, the studio exploded into claps that sounded like forgiveness. Dennis hugged me with the careful joy of a man who had learned to celebrate without tempting fate. I ran to the hospital with mascara smudging and a plastic container of soup that had cooled but still smelled like care. Through the glass, my mother lifted a hand, weak and stubborn. I did it. I mouthed, and the tight band around my chest loosened for the first time in weeks. By midnight, the internet had given me a crown I didn't ask for, the queen of the multi-cooker. A nickname equal parts affectionate and absurd. Clips of my tearful honesty ricocheted across timelines. Buyers thanked me for not pretending, for talking like a person who knew kitchens and grief. The network booked me for a prime evening slot the following week. Simone pressed a coffee into my hands and grinned. "You found your voice?" she said. "Don't misplace it." I didn't. Mornings turned into drills with Dennis. He wouldn't let me hide behind memorized lines. We dismantled products until they spoke in plain language. We built a habit: name the truth, show the proof, make the benefit personal. When a high-end vacuum with a painful price tag took the stage, I didn't pretend it was cheap. I said it was expensive and durable, the kind of machine that divided cost by years until the math told a different story. The phones lit. Another night, I presented a modest blender and said its bargain meant compromises, but that for smoothies and soup, it punched above its weight. The chat filled with heart emojis I still wasn't used to receiving. Between shows, I scrolled past the old clips of my collapsed wedding and felt something inside me harden. Not into bitterness, but into a vow. If success was a form of revenge, I would choose a version that fed people. I started pitching a segment where I could feature small makers whose excellence rarely cracked prime time. Dennis listened, then smiled in that way he did when he saw a curve becoming a line. "Call it your selection," he said. "Make it a promise." The idea grew into flesh the day I drove out of the city to a warehouse in rural Georgia. The air smelled of earth and dried peppers, and an elderly woman with hands carved by decades of labor met me at the door. She sold spice rubs, a craft passed down and nearly extinguished by loss, her son gone. Her daughter-in-law vanished, grandchildren to feed on jars of flavor and hope. I listened, notebook silent in my lap, because sometimes the only proper sales pitch is the truth. When we aired her segment during Ava's selection, I didn't embellish. I told viewers about her 50 years of devotion, about how she stirred love into every blend while holding her family together. Within minutes, the phones cracked under demand. A year's worth of inventory sold in 10 minutes. She called crying, and for the first time since Marcus's text. I cried too, but with pride instead of shame. That moment revealed something I had missed. I wasn't just selling products. I was reviving lives. Letters poured in from small makers thanking me, from buyers who felt they weren't just shopping, but saving a piece of tradition. Fans started following me the way others followed pop stars. The chat during broadcasts turned into a chorus of encouragement. But shadows lurked. Whispers online resurfaced the wedding clip, framing me as a gold digger, mocking that I had been left for someone richer. I wiped tears alone at night. then returned to the camera with a smile that grew more real each time I thought of the Spice Woman's grateful voice. Month by month, I grew sharper. My honesty became my brand. I told viewers when something was costly, when something was imperfect, and that very imperfection made it human, trustworthy. I dropped a blender live on air, gasped, then showed how it survived. Orders spiked. The clip went viral. The network promoted me to prime time. Ava's selection became a flagship, and my calendar was a blur of early rehearsals, factory visits, and late-night applause. In the mirror, I sometimes whispered, "See this. Marcus, I'm rising." But though revenge fueled me, it slowly twisted into something bigger, something brighter. Within 3 years, I launched my own company, AvaCon. I built it around humor, honesty, resilience. Our first cosmetic line carried the slogan, "Even if they betray you, don't let your skin." The phrase was part joke, part anthem, and it exploded across social media. A crowdfunding campaign soared past $1 million in a single day. Investors chased me instead of the other way around. By year's end, revenues topped $100 million, from 60 employees to 100, from one rented floor to a 10-story headquarters in downtown Chicago. I became the miracle headline, the abandoned bride turned CEO. Awards followed Businesswoman of the Year, Entrepreneur Icon. I stood on stages in gowns, clutching trophies, smiling for flashes. And yet, when the parties ended, I often found myself staring at city skylines with a glass of wine, whispering Marcus's name like an old scar. If he had stayed, would I be celebrating 10 years of marriage, 2 children, and quiet dinners instead of quarterly revenues? Would happiness have looked simpler, warmer? I shoved the thought away and told myself revenge was enough. But revenge is a meal that loses taste over time, leaving the stomach empty. The Beaumont family didn't ignore my rise. Chloe watched with the same envy she once used to pluck Marcus from my side. In private rooms, she spat my name like it was bitter fruit. She persuaded her father to turn their corporate arsenal on me. And one by one, pillars began to crack. Online rumors painted me as a fraud, twisting my history into scandal. Trolls flooded reviews of our products with poison. A top executive defected to the Beaumont firm, carrying secrets. Retailers cut ties under pressure. The TV shopping network that had given me wings barred me under threat of losing Beaumont advertising. Even Dennis, my anchor, was pushed into resignation. The empire I had built on determination and humor began to crumble with terrifying speed. Then came the board ultimatum: sell at 1/10 of value to the Beaumonts or face bankruptcy. Their contract included a clause barring me from cosmetics or retail for 10 years. It wasn't a purchase. It was an execution. I stared at the papers alone in my office until dawn. Pen hovering, hands trembling. 10 years of climbing, 10 years of sweat and vengeance, reduced to ink on a page. And in the hospital, Dennis lay unconscious from the stress of fighting alongside me. His wife blamed me. She wasn't wrong. By Friday, I had almost surrendered. I sat in a cafe near the office when Marcus appeared, gaunt, his confidence eroded. Chloe had discarded him as easily as she had stolen him. He asked for forgiveness, tears blotting his words. I listened, cold and brittle, and told him I felt nothing. But walking away, the hollowness cracked me open. 10 years, all spent proving to a ghost that I could outshine betrayal. And for what? The next morning, I arrived at the office to find 30 people waiting, owners of small businesses I had once lifted. The spice woman, the handbag maker, the refrigerator craftsman. They told me their stories, how my shows had saved their families, how their gratitude now demanded they save me. They pooled $10 million to invest, not as charity, but as faith. They brought a lawyer armed with proof of the Beaumont's corruption, even a whistleblower from inside. Their words and tears pierced the fog I had lived in. It wasn't revenge I had built. It was community. It wasn't vengeance I had fueled. It was opportunity. With trembling hands, I tore the Beaumont contract into pieces. This time, I wouldn't collapse. This time, I wasn't alone. Federal agents in dark suits stormed the Beaumont offices just days later. Cameras captured executives led away in handcuffs. Evidence boxes stacked like coffins of a dynasty's pride. President Beaumont was indicted for stock manipulation, defamation, and obstruction. Chloe herself emerged in shackles, screaming for her father, her old elegance stripped away under prison gray. The same media that once mocked me now branded her the face of corruption. For the first time in a decade, the weight of her shadow lifted from my shoulders. My company revived like a tree after drought. With the joint investment from small businesses and the flood of public sympathy, AvaCon surged back. Employees returned, suppliers reopened contracts, and customers bought with fierce loyalty. The press called me a symbol of justice, a woman who had fought not just for herself, but for every small name bullied by giants. At a modest office party, amid pizza boxes and laughter, one colleague shouted, "Ava's our national hero." I waved them off, but in my chest, pride glowed steady and warm. When Dennis finally woke in the hospital, his voice was fragile but firm. "Don't give up," he whispered, his hand cold in mine. "Your true revenge is dignity." I squeezed his palm, tears spilling. In his weary smile, I found the last piece of courage I needed. I wasn't climbing to outshine Marcus anymore. I wasn't chasing Chloe's ghost. I was standing for everyone who believed in me, who wrote letters, who cried with gratitude when their lives were saved by one sold-out show. Within 3 years, AvaCon had gone public. On the morning of our debut at the New York Stock Exchange, my company's name lit up the massive digital boards. The crowd erupted when our market capitalization crossed $1 billion before noon. I walked to the podium with a steady posture and a smile that felt unforced, like sunlight breaking through after rain. My new beginning was a betrayal, I told the audience. But my ending is gratitude. Without falling, I wouldn't have learned to rise. Without being abandoned, I wouldn't have discovered purpose. The ovation rolled like thunder. Dennis wept openly in the front row. Small business owners cheered, and for the first time, my past didn't haunt me. It steadied me. As I left the building, a valet opened the car door. He was older, clothes wrinkled, eyes dulled. Marcus. Time had whittled him down to a shell of the man who once shattered me. Our eyes met for a single heartbeat. "Thank you," I said, my tone calm. No anger, no longing. He lowered his head, wordless, stepping back into the anonymity of his new life. For me, there was no more Marcus, no more Chloe, only the wide horizon. That night, I looked at my reflection in the window of my penthouse office. 10 years ago, I had collapsed in satin, thinking the world ended. 10 years later, I saw a woman reborn, not because of vengeance, but because pain had taught her resilience. "Thank you, Marcus, for leaving me," I whispered, and I meant it. Betrayal had been my crucible, success my armor, but community and purpose had become my true crown. If my story has touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced betrayal that turned into unexpected strength? Share your experiences in the comments. I read everyone. And if you found meaning here, please like, share, and subscribe so we can keep bringing stories of resilience, justice, and new beginnings to light.